Soiled it! Soiled it!
The Last of Us Season 2 recently came to its conclusion, and it's safe to say that this season was extremely disappointing, both for people who have only watched the show and for people who are fans of the game. But why is this the case? It's for one simple reason. Change. The Last of Us Season 2, for some unknown reason, decided to change a lot of the story elements from The Last of Us Part 2 video game, and it resulted in the show being bad in its own right on top of being a poor adaptation of the game. And throughout the course of this video, I would like to discuss how it ended up being a bad show and how it ended up being a bad adaptation by discussing a few of the characters in the show and their character arcs throughout the course of the story. So if that intrigues you, kick back, relax, and let's get into it. Ellie is one of the most poorly handled characters in The Last of Us Season 2, and that's mainly because her character is altered very drastically than how she's supposed to act in the game. Or, I guess I should say, in Ellie's case, they didn't change her character. You see, Ellie in The Last of Us Season 2 acts exactly the same way that she does in The Last of Us Season 1. To the same point that if I were to tell you that The Last of Us Season 2 took place a few days after The Last of Us Season 1, you probably wouldn't bat an eye and question what I had to say about it, even though this show is supposed to be 5 years after the events of Season 1.
I want a motherfucking dinosaur!
How are you doing, Ellie?
Give me a moment. It's really complicated because, feelings.
Okay.
And this causes a massive issue with the story, because The Last of Us Part 2 story is a narrative about how hate corrupts an individual and actively destroys every aspect of their life if they can't learn to forgive, forget, and let go of that hatred and anger. However, this show's rendition of Ellie can't really express those emotions very well because she's written to be the same bubbly, quirky 14-year-old that we saw in the first season of the show. This ends up creating a disparity with her character, where 90% of the time we'll see Ellie cracking jokes and doing a bunch of goofy things like she would in the first season of the show. But then we'll have dark and disturbing moments like where she's beating Nora half to death with a metal pipe. These two moments don't feel like they fit well together because Ellie as a character is supposed to have snapped at this point. Ellie is supposed to have made a decision after watching Joel died to do whatever is necessary to find and hunt down Abby to get revenge for what happened to him. And this internal decision by Ellie is very clearly seen throughout all of her actions in the course of the game. We see how this decision to hunt down Abby, no matter what it costs her, ends up ruining Ellie's life. From the moment when DINA tells Ellie that she's pregnant and her initial reaction is to call her a burden because it's going to negatively affect her ambition to hunt down Abby, to her argument with Jesse about going after Abby and abandoning Tommy's life, we can clearly see that Ellie is making the wrong decisions and hurting her loved ones around her in doing so because she's internally decided that it doesn't matter what it costs, she has to kill Abby to get closure for Joel's death, even though we see that this is the wrong decision. However, the show's rendition of Ellie never properly executes these emotions. Throughout the entire season of the show, we never truly feel that Ellie's decisions are heavily weighing down on her after all the messed up things that she's done. And then the few moments that they do try and adapt from the game to relay to the audience in the show end up feeling wrong because they've drastically changed the point of each of those scenes. Prime example of this is the argument between Jesse and Ellie over whether or not Ellie should go and help him find and save Tommy, or if she should go and kill Abby. This argument happens drastically differently between the game and the show, so we'll start with the show. Earlier in episode 7, Ellie and Jesse stumble across a Scar kid who is being attacked by a group of wolves. Ellie wants to save this child, but Jesse says no because they don't know him, this isn't their conflict, it has nothing to do with them, plus if they go out now, they're going to get overwhelmed because it's going to be like 6v2 and they're all heavily armed, this would be a terrible idea. And Ellie's very upset with this because she believed that they should have risked their lives to save that innocent child. I say innocent in air quotes because the Scars aren't exactly good people, but the show wants you to feel bad for this kid that's being attacked. Now fast forward to the end of the episode, or more like the halfway point of the episode, where Ellie and Jesse get into an argument because Ellie figures out where Abby is hiding out. She realizes that Abby is hiding out in the aquarium, but they overhear on a radio that Tommy is being pinned down by a bunch of wolves, and Jesse's like, we have to go and help Tommy. And Ellie's like, no, Abby's right there in the aquarium, I could get my revenge. Plus, Tommy would want me to kill Abby anyway, and he's definitely got these guys pinned down. There's no reason for us to go over there and help him. Let's just go and kill Abby. This sparks an argument between the two of them, where Jesse's like, are you stupid? We have to go and help Tommy. We have to do it. And Ellie lashes out at him, calling him a hypocrite because all he cares about is helping the Jackson community. That he was so willing to let an innocent child die, again, innocent in air quotes, by being killed by a bunch of wolves, but he's hell-bent on putting himself in an even worse situation to go and save Tommy because he values Tommy as a part of the Jackson community that he is a part of and that he values with his life. And that if he was in her shoes and someone he cared about had died, he would be hell-bent on revenge and would want to go after Abby the way that she does right now. And here's the thing. This scene is elevated by the fact that it's revealed that Jesse voted against Ellie to go and get revenge for Abby, because something I haven't brought up yet is that in episode 3 of the show, there is a town meeting in Jackson that votes on whether or not they will send a small party of people to go claim vengeance for Joel, and the council votes against that, and Jesse is on the council, so he placed one of the votes, making the deciding factor, and he voted against doing that. Now, this ends up being really pointless and stupid, and I will talk about the whole trial and council meeting of Jackson later on in this video. But the point is, this is here to just elevate the stakes of the argument between Ellie and Jesse. But the problem is, there's no right person in this argument. They're both being stupid idiots. And this makes their whole argument really dumb. You see, from Jesse's point of view, he wants to go and save Tommy because, well, Tommy's his friend, and that's why he wants to save him. It's pretty cut and dry. However, the problem is, Jesse is willing to risk his life in an even more extreme situation because he values Tommy as a friend, but he wasn't willing to save a child who was going to be murdered in a less dangerous situation. And that's what Ellie is calling out for being hypocritical. Meanwhile, Jesse is calling Ellie out on being a hypocrite because she's willing to let her uncle die to go and claim revenge for her father that died. That's really dumb as well. Both of them are being stupid characters in this argument. They're both willing to do something that contradicts how they were acting earlier in the episode. Ellie was someone in this same episode that was willing to risk her life to save a complete and total stranger. Meanwhile, Jesse was someone who was unwilling to risk his life even though the situation was less dangerous than the situation he's currently going to risk his life going for to save Tommy because he values Tommy as a friend. They're both being hypocrites. They're both wrong in this situation, so there's no one to root for in this argument. It just makes them both look like complete incompetent idiots. Now compare this to the argument in the game. The whole point of the argument in the game is to showcase that Ellie has clearly lost her way. And I say argument very loosely because the two of them don't even really have much of a back and forth. All that happens is Jesse tells Ellie earlier on in the day that he should have just gone with her to kill Abby in the first place. That she should have just asked him because he would have dropped everything in a heartbeat to help her hunt down the woman that killed Joel because he values Ellie as a friend. Now fast forwarding to the moment that they start butting heads, what happens is they're just about to reach Abby. They see the aquarium, it's in their sight line, but then they hear over a wolf radio that Tommy is pinned down, and Jesse's like, okay, we gotta go help and save Tommy. And Ellie's like, well, I mean, Tommy's probably gonna be fine, he can handle himself. We're right here. We should just go and finish our mission and kill Abby, especially because Tommy's on his way to kill Abby anyway, so let's just go and do that. And instead of arguing with Ellie, Jesse just looks at her very disappointingly and is just like, I hope you get what you wanted. And then he leaves to go save Tommy. That's what happens to them in the game because Ellie's supposed to be the character in the wrong here. We're supposed to see how Ellie's actively ruining her relationships and ruining her life and making poor decisions because she can't get over her anger and hatred towards Abby because she can't let go of her desire for revenge. That's the point of this scene. But in the show, they make it this big dramatic argument between Ellie and Jesse that doesn't make any sense at the end of the day when you stop and think about it for a couple of minutes. And that really sucks because something I truly love about The Last of Us Part 2 is that the game manages to handle subtlety extremely well. It's able to express human emotion on a very deep and compelling level, but this show doesn't do that. And that's exactly why Ellie still acts the same exact way that she did in Season 1 of the show. Ellie in season 1 is more bubbly and outgoing. She's more willing to tell you how she's feeling at the drop of the dime. But Ellie in season 2 is supposed to be more jaded. That's how she's supposed to be in the game. But we can't have that. We can't have a more jaded and somber, quiet character that you have to pick up based off of their physical acting cues and movements about how they're feeling as an individual. Base everything that they are going through on their actions and use that to formulate your opinion about how they feel in that moment and what they're doing to their life. We can't have any of that. That's too complex for the audience to understand. We need Ellie to be able to exposit to the audience how she's feeling, to make big, long monologues about how characters are being hypocrites that end up giving the thesis of the game in the entire argument, which I think is really stupid. And if you still don't believe me, a perfect example of how Ellie as a character is not handled in a subtle way whatsoever is in episode 6, the flashback episode that depicts how Ellie and Joel's relationship fell apart. Now, I know some of you right now might be thinking to yourself, but Cameron, that was one of the best episodes of the show. What could you possibly have had a problem with it? And, well, like I was just saying, I have an issue with the fact that their flashback does not have any level of subtlety and deep emotion to it. I think it is one of the best episodes of this show, but I still don't really like how they executed everything, especially in comparison to how they did it in the game. You see, Ellie and Joel's relationship in the show deteriorates more from Ellie just growing up more than Ellie's emotional state being chipped away at knowing internally that Joel has been lying to her for the past 5 years, because that's how they execute it in the game. But let's focus more on what happened in the show first before we delve into that. In the show, it starts off pretty normally. Ellie and Joel are exactly how they were at the end of season 1. They're very loving and caring to each other, but as time goes on, the two of them kind of grow apart. Now, Ellie as a character, given that she acts exactly the same that she did in the first season, we don't really get the emotional growth of Ellie feeling all that different. She kind of has moments where she has arguments with Joel, but she doesn't feel like she's aging and becoming more jaded like she does in the game. It's more just like Ellie and Joel had a spat, and now it's put them in a position where they don't talk to each other, as opposed to us visibly seeing Ellie become an entirely different person with age, which I think is an entirely missed opportunity. But I digress. We start off, everything's fine in their relationship. They go to the museum, they have a wonderful birthday with Ellie, and then she looks at a bunch of fireflies and it reminds her about what happened in Salt Lake City, and she gets a little upset. But then everything ends up just being fine until we move up to her next birthday, and we see that Joel is upset with Ellie because he catches Ellie about to have sex with a girl. She's getting a tattoo and she's smoking weed. This is something I would expect to see in like a normal teen drama, not in my post-apocalyptic, depressing zombie apocalypse show. Like, it's just really weird that this is what's going on here, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that Joel lied to Ellie about what happened in Salt Lake City. She's just upset that Joel isn't respecting her boundaries, and she tries to like move out in the middle of the night during a thunderstorm, and it's like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? What is this whole thing about? Like, they're having a normal argument that parents and teenagers have with one another. Like, why is this the argument that is causing Joel and Ellie's relationship to deteriorate? It's really dumb. And then the final nail in the coffin is a completely new and original scene that's added into the show, that being Gail and Eugene. You see, we are introduced to a character in episode 1 of the show named Gail. She was apparently the wife of someone that lived in Jackson named Eugene, who was alluded to have been killed by Joel for some unknown reason that we learned about in this episode. You see, Eugene was out on patrol and he got infected. And according to the rules of Jackson, you have to execute someone who has been infected so they do not become infected as like a full-blown clicker or runner is what they would probably be when they first turn, and cause problems for the community and potentially infect other people. So Joel wants to do this. However, Eugene's like, well, wait a minute, I didn't get bit that long ago. I could probably go back to Jackson and say goodbye to my wife, which that's a really stupid plan. He's like, oh yeah, you could just tie me up and throw me on the back of the horse and then we'll just go back to Jackson and then I can say goodbye to my wife and then you guys can kill me. And it's like, no, That's a really dumb idea. We've seen how fast people turn after they've gotten bit. This is a really dumb idea that should not be done in any capacity. However, Ellie is empathizing with Eugene. She's like, yeah, Joel, he isn't that far gone. We can take him back to Jackson. So Joel lies to Ellie and he's like, okay, fine, we'll take him back to Jackson. And then he ends up killing Eugene. I'll give credit where credit is due. There's a really good subtle moment here where Joel potentially might have actually meant what he said and is guiding Eugene to where Ellie would be bringing the horses back to. But then Eugene, someone who was gone on the patrols of Jackson, has this moment where he doesn't remember which way is the way back to Jackson. And then Joel has this internal moment where he's just like, oh God, he's already turning, because how would he not know how to get back to Jackson? He goes on this patrol all the time. And that's when he decides to guide Eugene in the wrong direction and then kill him. So I think that's a really beautiful scene. However, it still doesn't change my opinion about the entirety of this sequence as a whole. Because then we get back to Jackson. Ellie is clearly pissed off that Joel lied to her. And then Joel goes to lie to Gale because he wants to give Gale a sense of closure. He tells Gale that Eugene went out like a hero and that he took his own life knowing that he was infected. However, unfortunately, Ellie snaps at this moment and tells Gale the truth that Eugene wanted to come back to town and say goodbye, and then Gale gets pissed at Joel, and then Ellie, she has a very subtle moment where she references the fact that Joel lied to her at the end of The Last of Us 1, and not that he lied to us here. It's a subtle dialogue cue that you might not have picked up if you weren't really paying attention very well. But even with that positive moment aside, this doesn't work for me because I don't think Ellie stopping speaking to Joel should be just because she knows he lied to her. Because Ellie's always known that Joel lied to her. Ever since the end of the first game, where Ellie's just like, okay, Joel. She knew he was lying in that moment. She's known ever since she was 14 years old. So the point and fact that the show's like, oh yeah, she has an extra confirmation that Joel lied to her, just doesn't work as the straw breaking the camel's back as them not talking to each other. And then Ellie learning what Joel actually did in Salt Lake City and forgiving him within the same scene is really dumb, because that's exactly what happens after this. We then skip ahead to the night of the dance where Joel stood up for Ellie and Dina when they got accosted by that bigot. And then afterwards, Ellie decides that she wants to forgive Joel. So she goes to talk to him and tells Joel to tell her exactly what happened in Salt Lake City. And he ends up doing so throughout their conversation. And she forgives him and they're going to start rebuilding their relationship. I think that's really dumb, because you mean to tell me that Ellie actually learning what Joel did and the fact that he doomed humanity by saving her life isn't worth her crashing out in some capacity? Like, she's okay with that? Like, because he told her that's what happened, she's like, okay, yeah, I can forgive you now because I haven't talked to you in a while? That doesn't make any sense to me. That, I feel like, would cause Ellie to crash out even more, learning what Joel took away from her. And in the game, these two moments are one in the same. So the way Ellie and Joel's relationship deteriorates in the game is that we start off same way it does in the show. It's Ellie's birthday. I believe she was turning 15, and they go to the museum. They have the cute astronaut moment. Everything's great. And then as they're leaving, Ellie sees that there were fireflies that were posted up in the base. It's like a sign that was like of the fireflies and said like they failed us or something along those lines. And Ellie's like, oh man, like, I know that Joel lied to me about Salt Lake City, but she kind of just buries it deep down and moves along. Then we fast forward a couple years later and we see that Joel, Ellie, and Tommy are out on patrol together. And Ellie is talking to Tommy, and Tommy is telling Ellie that she needs to go and talk to Joel more. He knows that she's growing older, but she still needs to talk to him because Joel's basically her dad, and she doesn't really want to do it. And you can tell it's because she's really starting to get weighed down by the fact that Joel won't tell her the truth, and she doesn't want to talk to him anymore because she knows it's not going to come up and she doesn't know how to bring it up herself. But Tommy ends up convincing Ellie to go on a little side quest with Joel because Joel and Tommy had discovered a shop that Ellie would like. I don't remember at the moment if it was a comic shop or if it was like a music store, but they found something that Ellie would be interested in and Joel wanted to take her there, and Tommy's like, yeah, go with him, have a good time. And this ends up being a really heartfelt and impactful moment in the story because this is the first time in The Last of Us 2 that we've seen adult Ellie and Joel acting the same way that they did in The Last of Us 1. We see the two of them bantering with each other the way that they used to. We see the bond the two of them have, and there's this really euphoric moment where Ellie and Joel get to fight side by side against infected. They're a true and honest to God team now, and it's culminated with the fact that they fight and defeat a bloater together. Now, this wasn't in The Last of Us Season 1 show, so this wouldn't really have the same level of impact for you, but in The Last of Us 1 video game, there is a boss fight where Joel has to fight a bloater inside of a gymnasium while Ellie is just throwing him ammo through a window because she can't do anything. But now in The Last of Us Part 2, Ellie and Joel are fighting side by side against a bloater and they take it down together. That's such a great moment and a fantastic callback to the first game. But then this moment is soured because at the end of this level where they're traveling through this abandoned spore-infested hotel building, they stumble across two people that used to live in the town of Jackson. These two apparently left to move somewhere else and got caught inside of the hotel and attacked by infected, and they returned themselves. Well, to be more specific, they were going to turn, one of them died, and the husband couldn't take his own life, and this resulted in him turning into an infected until Joel and Ellie end up taking him out when they get attacked by him. And this results in Ellie really self-reflecting on everything that Joel told her about Salt Lake City, because she's like, I'm immune to this. And these people, they could have used my immunity and they wouldn't have ended up this way. They could have survived, but they didn't. And it's all because the Fireflies apparently couldn't make a cure, but she doesn't buy what Joel told her. So she confronts Joel about what happened, and she's just like, you said there were more immune people at this place in Salt Lake City, but I've never met another immune person amongst the many people that have come in and out of Jackson traveling to trade, or any of the people that you and I met on our adventures. Are you sure there were more immune people? What did they say? And Joel just shuts down the conversation because he doesn't want to tell Ellie the truth. And you can see how that hurts her. And it especially hurts the audience after we saw Joel and Ellie be the dynamic duo, the team that we were hoping they would be, when people found out that The Last of Us Part 2 game was going to be about an adult Ellie. We wanted to see the two of them traveling with each other as an honest-to-God team. However, this all then culminates in the following flashback, which this doesn't happen in the show whatsoever, and I can't believe that they wouldn't want to put this into the show because of how phenomenal this sequence is. Ellie sneaks out of Jackson and goes to Salt Lake City, and she's investigating the Firefly base to figure out what Joel actually did. And she ends up finding a recording of them talking about the fact that Joel killed the doctors and took her out of there. And she forces Joel to tell her what he actually did. Otherwise, she is leaving, point blank, period. She's not even going to go back to Jackson. She's never going to speak to him again, and he's never going to see her again unless he tells her right now what happened. And I'm just going to let this scene play out because it's just so good.
Tell me what happened here. If you lie to me one more time, I'm gone. You will never see me again. But if you tell me the truth, I'll go back to Jackson. No matter what it is. Just say it. Joel.
Making a vaccine would have killed you. So I stopped them.
Oh my God. Don't you fucking touch me! I'll go back. But we're done.
How could you see this scene and not want to adapt it into the show, but instead replace it with the Gale and Eugene story? I just simply cannot fathom doing something like that, because this scene is 10 times more impactful and emotional than adding in characters that I didn't know about and don't care about. We don't meet Eugene until the scene that he dies, and Gale, I never really liked Gale in the show at all. She just felt like a piece for the characters to exposit to because she's a therapist. I didn't like her character, and I didn't care about her story with Eugene. It was really hard for me to care about this whatsoever. I admit, it's well acted, it's well directed, and I completely understand what they were going for, but I just think what they did in the game was just significantly better, and it held more emotional weight. And the fact that they replaced that with the Eugene and Gale story just felt upsetting to me. On top of the fact that Ellie, again, doesn't find out this information about what Joel did in Salt Lake City until the moment that she forgives him, which I just don't think is believable. And all this culminates in Ellie having a weird character personality and a bad arc throughout the course of this season of the show. She feels like she keeps flip-flopping back and forth with this weird inconsistency between having to act like 14-year-old version of herself while also having these deep introspective tragic moments where she's attacking Nora and having arguments with Jesse. It just feels wrong because, well, this isn't how Ellie's supposed to be, and these moments constantly contradict themselves, and it just really sucks because I wanted Ellie to be really cool in this and people to see how awesome she is in part 2, but the show just doesn't do that. Despite being in the majority of the season, Tommy doesn't really have all that much to do, and somehow, even with the minimal things they gave him, they managed to mess up his character. You see, despite Tommy being Joel's brother and the closest person that you would expect to have the same level of hatred and lust for revenge that Ellie does, Tommy just doesn't care this season that Joel died. And before you go, well, we have scenes like Tommy cleaning up Joel's corpse and him organizing the council meeting of Jackson. That's it. That's basically the show trying to tell you, oh, Tommy cares that Joel died, but then beyond that, there's no actions that he puts forward that justify him in any of his emotions. He basically just gives up on getting revenge for Joel after his death, which is completely insane to me. After the council meeting in Jackson in the 3rd episode of the show, Tommy doesn't do anything until the last 2 scenes of the final episode, because he isn't in episodes 4 or 5. Episode 6, he's in it, but that entire episode is a flashback that takes place before any of the events of the show. And then that brings us around to the final episode where Tommy literally shows up for the last couple of scenes of the episode, and he doesn't really do anything there except talk to Ellie, which is completely baffling to me because this is Joel's brother. Why doesn't Joel's brother have more agency in a story about trying to get revenge for his heinous death? You see, before I decided to make this video, I was reviewing The Last of Us Season 2 episode by episode, and in episode 2, I was very excited to see what they were going to do with Tommy's story because they expanded it in a way that I wasn't expecting. You see, in the game, Tommy is actually the one who goes on patrol with Joel, and the two of them run into Abby. However, in the show, this is drastically different. Dina is the one who is on patrol with Joel when he gets caught by Abby, and Tommy is stuck in Jackson defending it from a horde of infected that attacks the city. And I saw so many possibilities that they could have gone with Tommy's story. I thought what they were going to do was that Tommy was going to be guilt-ridden over the fact that Joel died in the city that he's in charge of. Tommy's job is keeping Jackson safe. It's his job to protect this community. Yet Joel, his brother, died under his watch while out on patrol. He was killed by unknown assailants that appeared out of nowhere, and they tortured him to death in such a heinous and disgusting way. And on top of that, while his brother was out there dying by himself, Tommy was stuck in Jackson fighting off a horde of infected that managed to breach the wall of the city and were killing people in the streets. I believed that all of this stuff was going to pile up on Tommy, and he was going to blame himself for all these bad things happening. He was going to blame himself for not having the city wall structurally sound enough to stop a bloater from punching its way into the city and letting infected in, killing multiple people. I thought Tommy was going to blame himself for not being with his brother Joel, for not being prepared for what if other survivors that were hostile towards the city of Jackson would come in and attack them, for not being there in general and failing to save his brother time and time again. Because you see, this isn't the first time that Tommy has failed to be there for Joel when he needed him most. We see that happen in the first episode of The Last of Us. Tommy shows up just a moment too late to stop that soldier from killing Sarah. Tommy saves Joel from being killed by the soldier, but he's too late. Sarah's been shot and he watches her bleed out in his brother's arms. His brother lost his daughter. Tommy lost his niece because he wasn't fast enough to get there to protect them. And I thought that these emotions, that all of this stuff was going to pile up on Tommy and he would truly and honestly hate himself and need to get revenge against Abby as some form of closure, as some way of reckoning what he did and not being able to be there for Joel when he needed him most. And honestly, this made me really excited because I have personal experience with those feelings. You see, a few years ago now, my dad passed away, and before he had passed away, he had started to get very sick. However, my dad was delusional. He didn't believe that he was as sick as he actually was, and he kept neglecting what the doctors were telling him to do and didn't get better. I constantly tried to talk to him to help him do what he needed to do to get better, but nothing worked because he had deluded himself into thinking that he just needed to work out and eat a little bit better and that everything would be fine, but that wasn't the case. He was extremely ill and I just couldn't do anything to convince him about it. So much so that when the doctor came up to me in the ER and told me that they couldn't save him, the first words out of my mouth were, "Why couldn't he just listen to me?" I blamed myself that I wasn't able to convince him to do the right thing to save his own life. So I was really excited to see Tommy go through a similar character arc, to see him blame himself for something that was out of his control and have to learn that this is what he should have done. Or I guess in the case of The Last of Us story and the way that his story goes in the games, he would never learn to come to terms with this and he would get riddled with hatred and anger and desperately want revenge against Abby. I was really looking forward to seeing them explore this aspect of the story, and then he does nothing. He just does nothing. He just stops being in the show for 2 episodes. And then he doesn't show back up until the end of episode 7. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, episode 6 is a flashback episode. So I just can't fathom why you would do this, especially when in the game, Tommy's actions are the driving force that move the story forward. Yeah, you don't know that if you've only watched the show. In the game, Tommy lies to Ellie, telling her that he's going to speak to Maria about organizing a group of people to go and hunt down Abby to buy himself time so he can leave Jackson on his own to hunt Abby down by himself because he doesn't want to put Ellie in danger. Remember that whole thing I mentioned earlier about Tommy internalizing his guilt about not being able to save Sarah? Yeah, this is that. He doesn't want Joel's daughter to be put in any danger because he failed to save his previous daughter. So he leaves Ellie in town, but Maria doesn't agree with this and lets Ellie and Dina go off to Seattle to catch up with Tommy and help him on his quest to hunt down Abby. And then when Ellie and Dina first get to Seattle, most of day 1 is them following Tommy's trail of blood of everyone he's killed, trying to catch up to him. He's actually killed like at least 2 or 3 of Abby's friends. I believe it was 2 of Abby's friends before Ellie even gets there. So the idea that this doesn't happen whatsoever and that Tommy just hangs out in Jackson until he needs to show up at the end of episode 7 because he's too integral to the plot to not be in those last couple of scenes of this show is just ridiculous. Why would you take this out of the story? It worked so well with this character. Joel's brother losing his mind and going on a revenge quest is is really integral to this plot, because Tommy is supposed to represent what will happen to Ellie if she doesn't let go of her revenge. Tommy becomes consumed with hatred and is desperate to get vengeance on Abby, and we see how this negatively destroys his life. Spoilers for what's probably going to be shown in season 4 of The Last of Us, but Abby shoots Tommy in the head and he just barely survives. He's left irreparably physically damaged after this, and he becomes a very bitter and angry person, and this results in Maria breaking up with him and leaving him entirely. So Tommy is left alone and physically injured throughout the rest of his life because he couldn't let go of his hatred. That's supposed to be what's going to happen to Ellie if she can't let go of her own hatred. So the idea that they took out Tommy's desperate need for revenge isn't going to make this character make any sense when he gets to that point. What is going to happen to Tommy now? Is he still going to get shot in the head and become physically disabled and still become a very spiteful and hateful person, and Maria's still going to leave him even though he didn't care about getting revenge and only went to Seattle to save Ellie? That doesn't make any sense anymore. Why would you take this integral part of his story out of The Last of Us? It doesn't make any sense. You need it in there in order for the story to function properly, but you guys took it out for, I don't know. Explain it to me, guys. I really don't understand why you decided to take this out of the story. It just makes no sense.
Soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled it!
Now, don't get things twisted. DINA is my second favorite character in The Last of Us Part 2 video game, and she is the most likable character in that entire game. However, her rendition in this show absolutely sucks, and it's truly and honestly character assassination. DINA in this show, for whatever ungodly reason, is written to be a toxic, hypocritical jerk, and I don't understand why they did this. And on top of all of that, the way they write DINA in this show actively contradicts what her character is supposed to represent in the game story, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. Let's start from the first issue that really cements why DINA doesn't work as a character in this season, and that's her relationship with Ellie. You see, in the game, DINA and Ellie's relationship is a very loving and heartfelt thing, and you're really supposed to buy into it because it's very important to what happens in the third act of the story. However, in this show, their relationship feels really uncomfortable and very toxic to a degree that you don't really want to be rooting for them to get together whatsoever. You see, at the beginning in episode 1, everything is pretty much fine. Ellie and DINA, they flirt with each other, they go on a date to the barn dance, they kiss, everything's great. Sure, I personally have issues with Bella Ramsey and Isabella Merced's chemistry in their scenes together. Like, they feel more like goofy friends than they do like a romantic couple, as opposed to the actresses who portrayed Ellie and DINA in the video game. Like, I fully bought into their romance in that story, but it just doesn't work the same way here. But putting my own personal nitpick with that aside, they're handled very well, and you can buy into the fact that they are a cute couple. However, their relationship isn't addressed basically at all in episode 2, mainly because of... which is fair. That's completely fair. And then that brings us to episode 3, which is the beginning of the end of DINA's character. DINA's character and her and Ellie's relationship completely nosedives at the start of episode 3. We learned throughout the course of this episode that DINA ghosted Ellie for 3 months straight. That whole 3-month time skip that happened, DINA never once spoke to Ellie about their date or the fact that they kissed each other or what their feelings are relative to each other. None of that happens over the course of 3 months. Then, while Ellie and DINA are on their way to Seattle, DINA then decides to drop a bombshell on Ellie. She tells Ellie that she not only got back together with Jesse, but that their kiss was completely meaningless because she's straight and not into girls. What am I supposed to do with this information, Joe? What exactly am I supposed to do with this information? And what's weird about this scene is that it's portrayed as a very cute moment where it's supposed to be like, oh, DINA says that she's not bisexual, but actually she might be, and Ellie might have a chance. Isn't that great, guys? She's gonna dump her boyfriend to get with Ellie, which, by the way, I know I have my problems with Jesse in this show, but I don't hate him as a person. I think they wrote him worse in this show than he is in the game, but that doesn't mean he's a bad person. So the idea that this show was like, oh guys, DINA might break up with her boyfriend to get with Ellie, like, this is a lose-lose situation here. Because it's like, on the one hand, I like Jesse, and I would like good things to happen for him. But then, on the other hand, I also like Ellie, and Dina being caught in the middle of the two of them and being like, yeah, well, I could just dump Jesse to get with Ellie. That's what everyone really wants. It's like, no, that doesn't feel good. Like, why is this the situation at hand here? This is really weird. Especially when we get to the following day and Dina reveals to Ellie that she's pregnant. Now, if I was Ellie, I would have reacted very differently. If I found out that my partner traveling with me on my revenge quest was pregnant, I would be a bit upset. Because, you know, carrying around a pregnant woman during a war zone isn't really the best case scenario because, you know, it's dangerous out there. Then add on the mixed emotions that I would have finding out that my crush not only got back together with their ex, but is now currently pregnant with their ex, who is now their current boyfriend's child. And I'm the first person to find out about it. That's a bit uncomfortable. So for me, I would feel really awkward and upset in this situation. However, Dina and Ellie, they decide to...
Why?
I truly and honestly do not understand how this is the result of this interaction. Especially when you compare it to the game, when this is how Ellie reacts when she finds out that Dina's pregnant.
I think I'm pregnant. What? Don't worry, it's not yours. What are we supposed to do now? Nothing. I just need to rest for a second. Are you fucking kidding me? How long have you known? It was late a few weeks ago. A few weeks? We could have still turned back. I didn't know. I wasn't sure, okay? I didn't want to be a burden. Well, you're a burden now, aren't you?
I know I briefly mentioned that scene earlier, but actually seeing it now and it being more relevant to what we're talking about just hits all the more harder. But in the show, after Dina and Ellie hook up, Dina then decides to trauma dump on Ellie as a justification for why she's been such a toxic person this entire time. She tells Ellie that her mother was a bigot that made her hide in the closet and wouldn't accept her for being bisexual, and even after her mother died, she struggled to come out of the closet and be openly bi, which, that's not true. That's actively not true, because you, Dina, asked out Ellie on a date. You took her to a public dance, danced with her, smushed your sweaty face up against her during the dance, and kissed her in front of the entire town. That doesn't seem like somebody who's struggling with being in the closet. That seems like someone who's openly out of the closet, dressed in rainbow colors. Like, what are we talking about here, people? And I'm not the only person who has a problem with this character arc for Dina, because I have heard people from the LGBTQ community talk about the fact that they would have just rather Dina just be openly bi instead of her having to go through an arc of coming out as bi, which, by the way, if you are someone in that community watching this video, Dina is just openly bi in the game, where she's a better character and more likable. So I'd recommend playing that if you just want to see a story where there's an openly bi character that just exists in a story without having a narrative of them having to come out. Which, they also do that with Ellie. Now that I'm thinking about it, they have a story about Ellie coming out in this, which is shown in the flashback episode, but Ellie's just gay in the game. They don't have a story of her coming out. She just is gay, and everyone expected her to be gay since the very beginning. So, like, I don't really understand why they did that in this show. That seems very unnecessary. That seems like a studio exec kind of decision. Like, someone was like, yo, guys. Yo, Ellie and Dina are both part of the LGBTQ community. It would be so great if you added in a story where they had to come out as gay and bi. And it's like, but why? Because, like, they're gonna eat it up. Who's they? Oh, you know the Twitter mobs that are gonna talk about the show. They're gonna eat it up, bro. It's gonna blow up. Our show's gonna be amazing, bro. You gotta talk about it like that. Come on, bro. It's gonna be great. I don't know where that accent came from, but anyway, back to Dina and how she's a terrible character this season. So all of that with Ellie and Dina's relationship is already bad enough, especially when you pull it out of the aspect of the show. Because let's say you, the viewer, went on a date with someone 3 months ago. They then ghosted you, hit you up to tell you that they started dating their ex, then they tell you that your date was meaningless and that your kiss didn't mean anything because they don't align with your sexuality, then the day later, they then reveal to you that they're pregnant with their ex, now current partner's child. What are you supposed to do with this information? Like, what are you supposed to do with that? Are you supposed to be happy about that? Like, it's so weird. But putting that aside, Dina's character still manages to get worse as time goes on, because then we get to the biggest conflict that makes me absolutely hate Dina. So, for context's sake, Dina in the game, much like how Tommy is a representation of the negative things that will happen to Ellie if she can't let go of her revenge, Dina is supposed to represent the positive aspects if Ellie is capable of letting go of her revenge. Dina represents the positive and happy life that Ellie could have. They could start a family. They could be a loving couple together. That is what Dina represents. And on top of that, they bring up the fact in the story that Dina is Jewish, which as I'm making this video, I'm starting to realize how that plays into Dina being someone that is capable of dealing with trauma. Because Jewish people have dealt with a lot of horrible things throughout history, and Dina being openly proud about being Jewish and accepting the fact that her people have gone through such terrible things and that's made her be capable of experiencing the apocalypse and surviving it and still managing to find positivity in it is such a beautiful thing to have in the story. That's not in this show whatsoever. Instead of having Dina represent the positivity that Ellie could have in her life if she's willing to let go of her revenge, Dina is fully on board with Ellie getting revenge against Abby. She has a whole monologue in one of the episodes of the show where she talks about the fact that if her mother and sister had died, she'd burn down the entire world to get revenge on their behalf.
What if that motherfucker made me watch as he did it? Would it make a difference if my family had hurt his people first? No. No. And if I hadn't killed him, if he had gotten away, I promise you, I would have hunted him down forever.
And this brings us to the final episode of the show where Ellie and Dina end up having a conversation where Ellie tells Dina that Joel killed Abby's dad. And this results in Dina having one of the most... I'm getting mad thinking about it. This results in Dina having one of the most insufferable things that happens in this entire show. Probably the most insufferable thing for me personally. Dina, the person who's been ride or die about helping Ellie kill Abby this entire season, decides that, oh, Joel killed Abby's dad. Yeah, you're wrong, Ellie. You're not justified in your revenge. We should go back to Jackson. She immediately and completely gives up on Ellie's revenge quest in that exact moment. Like, what do you mean? No, you know what? No. We're gonna break this down. We're gonna take a detour from Dina for a second, and we're gonna break down this entire section. Abby isn't any more justified than Ellie is in her revenge. Both Ellie and Abby are on revenge quests to get payback for their fathers being unjustly murdered. That is the reason they're both doing what they're doing. They are equally justified in their crash outs. And the reason that this ended up happening in the first place is because both, yes, you heard me, both of their fathers were selfish and made incredibly stupid decisions that resulted in their daughters ruining their lives trying to get revenge. You see, Joel, we all know, he was incapable of losing another daughter, so he then risked everything to kill the Fireflies to save Ellie, and that resulted in him killing Abby's dad. However, what put Joel in that situation? Oh yeah, that's right. Abby's dad decided to murder an innocent child because he believed that there was a tiny possibility that he could extract her brain and use it to create a vaccine to the cordyceps virus. Now, we don't know how effective this vaccine would be. We don't know if you need a re-up. We don't know how many they'd be capable of making. All we know is that he would have been able to make a vaccine. At least that's what they want us to believe. That's what he was hoping would be capable, that he'd create a vaccine that would cure everybody. But that was just a small possibility. Yet he justified murdering a 14-year-old child in this endeavor. No matter what way you slice it, even if you're like, oh yeah, well, it was to save the world, that doesn't make it okay. It's the trolley problem situation where it's like you can kill one innocent person or 5 innocent people. Either way, you're killing an innocent person to save somebody else. Neither option is good. That's the situation this doctor is in. And him doing this is what resulted in Joel wanting to hunt down and kill the Fireflies, which, by the way, Joel doesn't even really want to kill the Fireflies. He just wants to save Ellie. They're just getting in his way. He even gives the doctor an option to not fight him on this. He's just like, bro, I just want to get Ellie. Just get out of the way. And he says no, so Joel kills him. He didn't kill him out of cold blood. He just did it because the dude wouldn't give up, which is completely understandable. Both of these idiots made selfish decisions, which if either of them just stopped and went, hey, what if we ask Ellie? None of this would have happened. Because Ellie wanted to sacrifice herself to save the world, but neither of them considered asking that because Abby's dad was all about, I have to save the world. I'm a superhero, so I must murder this 14-year-old child in order to do so. And Joel was like, yeah, I'm not going to lose my daughter. So I'm going to kill you and get my daughter because you're going to get in my way. That's what both of them are on. That's the timing both of them are on. And this results in Ellie and Abby both wanting revenge for their dads being killed. They're both equally justified because both of their dads did something equally stupid that resulted in putting both of them in this hate-filled revenge state. So Dina, thinking that Abby is more justified than Ellie just because, what, Joel shot first? Well, if you want to get technical, then technically Abby's dad wanted to kill Ellie first, which prompted Joel to want to get Ellie out and was forced to kill the Fireflies. So, like, technically Joel was more justified in killing them than Abby is in getting revenge for Joel killing them in the first place, Dina. This is a whole stupid chicken and the egg kind of situation where we're playing like, oh, who's more justified first and who did what first to justify them doing blah, 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 blah. They're equally justified in their revenge, and Dina thinking that Abby's more justified and that meaning that they should give up on the revenge quest is really stupid, especially when you compare it to the game where Dina is willing to help Ellie despite the fact that she is deathly ill. You see, in the game, Dina starts getting really sick because she is forcing herself to do all of these extreme activities while pregnant. She's fighting crazy soldiers, she's fighting cultists, she's fighting zombies, she's running around in the rain and hiding in cold, damp, unsecure buildings. She's not eating properly. All of this is happening while she's pregnant, and this results in her becoming extremely nauseous. She goes pale in the face, her eyes become bloodshot, she can barely stand and move around anymore. Yet despite that, she's willing to stay in Seattle with Ellie because she wants to help her get her revenge because she believes her girlfriend needs this closure. She's willing to accept Ellie doing the wrong thing because she believes that it should help her. But as time goes on, Dina comes to the realization that doing this was really stupid. They would almost die in this situation because, spoilers again for later on in the story, when we get to Act 3 of the story, it's about like a few months, maybe a year later after the events of everything that happens in Seattle, and Ellie and Dina and Tommy just barely survive their confrontation with Abby inside of the theater. Abby dog walks all of them and then leaves, leaving them beaten, bloodied, and half dead. So now, a few months later, Ellie and Dina have started a happy life together. They're peaceful, everything's great, and she wants nothing to do with Abby anymore. She's just like, yo, we're good. We don't need to go hunt down Abby anymore. Everything's fine. We're a loving family. That's it. It was stupid for us to go out there in the first place because it almost got us killed. That is the kind of timing that Dina is on. Because again, remember what I said earlier, Dina represents the peaceful life that Ellie could have if she gives up her revenge quest. As a matter of fact, Dina and Tommy represent the angel and devil on Ellie's shoulders. There is literally an argument between the two of them that perfectly encapsulates this. There's a point in the game where Tommy goes up to Ellie and he tells her he found out where Abby is, and he asks Ellie to go and kill her, which is a direct flip on how he was earlier in the story where he actively wanted Ellie to stay in Jackson to keep her safe. Tommy has completely lost all patience and is completely given into revenge and hatred at this point in the story. So he's like, Ellie, you promised me that you'd get revenge, that you'd kill Abby for killing Joel, so I can't believe that you don't want to go. And then Dina gets pissed off and she argues with Tommy, literally behind Ellie's back. Ellie is holding Dina and her kid, and outside behind her are literally the angel and devil on her shoulder, arguing back and forth in Ellie's ear, with Tommy being like, oh, you don't care that Joel died and that's your problem. She needs to go and kill Abby. And Dina's like, no, our life is happy now. We're peaceful. We don't need to risk our lives killing Abby. This is stupid. They're literally arguing back and forth like that because that's what their characters are supposed to represent. But this show's rendition of Dina doesn't function like that at all. She believed Ellie was justified until she learned that Joel killed Abby's dad, and now Abby's more justified, so Ellie should give up on her revenge. That's really stupid. Why would you make that change? That doesn't make living with Dina the happy, angelic, peaceful ending for Ellie. It just makes Dina look like a hypocrite. Like, this is so stupid. And it truthfully and honestly sucks because, again, I love Dina in the game. She has so many good moments. Most of the iconic moments from The Last of Us Part 2 are the scenes with Dina in it. The barn dance, the Take On Me sequence. Hell, I'd even say the snowball fight at the beginning is such a charming and loving sequence. And the end of the game, that scene is impactful because Dina's not there. She leaves Ellie after she goes to hunt down Abby again, and when Ellie comes home, Dina's gone. The place is empty. That scene feels the way it does because it lacks Dina's presence. She's such an important and wonderful character in the game, and they absolutely butchered her in this show, and I hate the fact that they did that, because I really like Dina, and I wanted to see her be handled really well. Why couldn't you guys just write her well? Why did you have to change things in the first place? This is so dumb. What is the purpose for you guys doing this?
Soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled it!
Throughout the course of this video, I have brought up numerous points as to how this show has done a lot of weird things that resulted in it harming itself as an adaptation of The Last of Us, and how it harmed itself as a show by itself. But that begs the question, how did we end up in this situation? Why is this show like this? And I believe the answer to that is Craig Mazin. Now, Craig Mazin is one of the creators and lead writers on The Last of Us TV show, and recently he's made a couple of statements that I think perfectly encapsulate how this show ended up in this weird position. The first thing I want to bring up is that Craig Mazin mentioned that they changed the confrontation between Owen, Mel, and Ellie at the end of Season 2 of The Last of Us as opposed to what it was in the game. And before I tell you why he changed it, I want you to know what happens in both the show and the game. In the show, Ellie pulls up on Owen and Mel and asks where Abby is. And instead of telling her where Abby is, Owen tries to pull a gun on Ellie, resulting in her shooting Owen in the neck. And that bullet manages to pass through Owen's neck, clip Mel on the side of the neck, and then as Mel is bleeding out, she's asking Ellie to cut out her unborn baby because Mel is multiple months pregnant. Ellie obviously can't do that because she's not a doctor, and this results in both Mel and the baby dying. Now, in the game, things happen drastically differently, and thankfully, because video game content isn't nearly as copywritten as TV show content, I can just show you guys what happened.
You. Come here. Fucking get over here! Point to where she is on this map. And then you better fucking match up.
What are you doing?
She's probably dead anyway.
It is not worth it.
Stop!
We can talk
Back
about
the fuck up! Point to where she is. Fucking point! Tell me where Abby is. Where the fuck is she?
So that's what happens in the game. Very different tone, very different vibe than everything that's going on in the show. And I personally think it makes a lot more sense and is way more impactful. I love the idea of Ellie just wordlessly freaking out that she killed an innocent baby, as opposed to this back and forth between Mel and Ellie about, oh, you need to cut the baby out before I die because you got to save my kid. I feel like the subtlety of just having Ellie sit there and realize the horror that she just committed is way better than having us have to watch Ellie fumble around trying to cut out a baby from this woman. I just think they went way too far, and it ends up making it feeling uncanny rather than horrific. But back to the topic at hand. Why was this changed? What did Craig Mazin give as his reason for why they changed the scene? And, well, the reason he gave is that he didn't find it believable. You see, the actor who plays Owen is a lot taller and bigger than Bella Ramsey, so he didn't think it'd be believable that Bella Ramsey would be capable of grappling her gun that she's already holding back from Owen to shoot him and kill him, and then fight off Mel and stab her in the neck. I don't understand why he thinks this or why he believed anyone would call it uncanny. Yes, I will admit there are tons of people out there that will nitpick things that are really stupid and don't make sense. I've done it myself in the past when I've seen things that contradict what I think is believable within the confines of a story. But in this instance, Ellie fights things that are like 3 times the size of Owen. At least in the game she does. Ellie is someone who can 1v1 bloaters. Like, of course she'll be able to grapple a gun away from a dude who's slightly taller than her and has a bit more muscle. Like, what are we talking about here? This is a story where we have a girl who is immune to a zombie virus. This is a story where we have zombies themselves. Yet it's unbelievable for this girl who's constantly been training how to fight people in hand-to-hand combat to grapple her gun away and shoot him with it. Like, what are we talking about here? This is so ridiculous. Especially when you stop and think about the fact that there are other moments in this show that don't make any logical sense. A perfect example of this is when Ellie is trapped inside of the hospital when she chased Nora down to that spore-infested area. They heavily bring up that that area is completely sealed off and that there are no exits. The only reason Nora and Ellie got down there in the first place is because they fell down an elevator shaft. So how did Ellie get out of there if every exit was sealed off with explosives? And the only way she got in was the elevator shaft that the wolves know she went down. Wouldn't there be people, I don't know, waiting to catch her when she came out or something? Because she would have to sneak back through the hospital to escape. So, like, that's not realistic. That's really dumb, actually. Or the idea that Ellie was able to find Abby in the exact same location after 3 months of letting her just fuck off and do whatever. That's not believable, yet that's in the show and you expect us to buy that. The idea that the scars just leave Ellie alive when they completely identify that she's an enemy just because there's more enemies over in their town, that's not believable. That's really stupid. Why would anyone let their enemy live when there's more enemies on the way? If anything, they would have killed Ellie and then went to go face the other enemies. That's really dumb, especially given the fact that they had her dead to rights. She was tied up already. They had no reason to leave her alive. Yet, Ellie grappling a gun away from someone when she's trained in hand-to-hand combat to shoot them, that's unbelievable because the guy's a bit taller than the actress playing Ellie. That's really dumb, dude. Come on, man. And the second thing that Craig Mazin brought up that fully has me believe that he's the one that made these changes to the show that made it really awkward is the fact that he brought up that he would not do another video game adaptation because he believes that The Last of Us TV show is his swan song. It's the magnum opus of his video game adaptations. He'll never be able to make anything better than this. And I'm sorry, dude, but absolutely not. This is 100% not a swan song. Season 1, I'll give you that. Season 1 was very good. That's a very good adaptation of The Last of Us Part 1. But Season 2 is a part of that same story, and you have to take the good with the bad. This entire show is not a swan song. Fallout, that's a swan song, at least based off of the first season because, you know, the series isn't over yet. Arcane, beautiful, phenomenal, magnum opus, swan song, probably one of the best, if not the best video game adaptation ever made. Sonic the Hedgehog movies, magnificent. That I would agree is a swan song. The Last of Us, absolutely not. This is not a solid adaptation of the game to the point where I would identify it as a swan song of video game adaptations. You could 100% work on other things that would be better than this. And I feel like those two things I just mentioned 100% prove my point, is that he believed that changing certain things was necessary because in his mind it just didn't work, and that what he currently made is a good adaptation of the Last of Us story, that this is what is peak, this is perfect in his eyes, and I don't think that's true. So at the end of the day, I believe that Craig Mazin has a major role to play in this show feeling as weird as it does. Now, with that being said, he's obviously not the only writer on this show. There are other writers on this show, including Neil Druckmann himself, who made the Last of Us video games. You would think the creator of the games would have seen the changes being made, clocked how it didn't coalesce with everything that happened in the game's material, and then be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. You know? So it's not entirely Craig's fault. I'm not here to crucify him in that regard, but you have to point out the flaws when you see them in big, bold letters. You know what I mean?
Soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled it!
Well, folks, this brings us to the end of the video. The Last of Us Part 2 was a disappointing season, and I really wish that it wasn't. I'm a big fan of the Last of Us Part 2 video game, and I wanted this season to be good. I wanted it to fix some of the writing issues that the game had and create a definitive issue of the story that both fans of the show who haven't played the game and people who wrote off the game after they heard that Abby killed Joel would be able to enjoy it and be like, you know what? This was actually pretty good. I had a fun time. That's what I was hoping this show would do, but instead it made a lot of pointless and unnecessary changes that end up hurting the story as an adaptation, and when you look at it as just a show, it ends up feeling really weird and uncanny. And I know many of you agree with me on this because this show lost tons of viewers after it released, especially when you compare it to the first season of the show. It's lost so many viewers that had tuned in from back in the day. And the reason for that is because it just doesn't hit as hard as the first season did. They made too many weird decisions that don't function as a narrative by itself, and people picked up on that. It's not just a bunch of video game fans who watched the show and went like, yeah, no, I'm not watching this anymore. I have friends who have never played The Last of Us that were like, yeah, I'm not really feeling this season, and stopped watching it. One of my friend's dads literally stopped and dropped the show in its entirety the second they killed Joel in episode 2. He was like, what's the point of this? I don't want to watch this anymore. And he just left. He stopped watching the show. He never went back to it. So the show is losing its dedicated viewers at an expeditious rate. And unfortunately, season 3 isn't going to be any better because it has been confirmed that Abby is going to be the main protagonist of season 3. Which, us people who have played the games, we knew that was going to happen. I hoped it wouldn't happen, but we knew it was going to happen because Act 2, as I mentioned earlier, of The Last of Us Part 2 is an extended flashback giving you all the information about Abby's story, but we already know part of it because we already know that she killed Joel because he killed her dad, because they bring that up in episode 1 as opposed to it being a big reveal at the beginning of Act 2 like it is in the game. So I really don't know what the big intrigue is going to be now in this season. Like, oh, great, we have a season where we watch Abby save an Asian kid from being a part of a cult. So interesting. Yay. Oh, great. We get to see her hang out with all of her friends that are dead now. Yay. Like, I don't know why anyone's going to care about this season, especially because Ellie's probably not going to be in it until the season finale, where her and Abby fight, which, by the way, newsflash, she loses that fight and gets brutally beaten. So I feel like that's going to cause a lot more people to flee from the show. So I can't even say I'm confident the show is going to make it to its proper conclusion at this point. It is what it is. I was hoping they would fix this issue. I was hoping the show would be good, and it just wasn't. And I don't want this show to be bad, but it is, in my opinion. And yeah, there are worse things out there, but that doesn't mean I'm going to excuse this. At the end of the day, I greatly appreciate you all coming through and watching this video. I'm happy you sat through all of my ramblings about this season, and as you made it this far, I truthfully and honestly appreciate that because, you know, I imagine like 90% of the people that were watching this video clicked off within like the first 5 seconds. So, you know, I greatly appreciate that you sat through all of this to get here. And I hope you end up sticking around if you enjoyed what I had to do here. So, without further ado, I'm the innocent villain. Remember, folks, you're innocent until proven villainous, and hopefully I will catch you next time. Peace.